Hi, welcome to the How She Made It Summit. We are talking about what it really takes to become a wealthy woman. I am your host, Tiffany Scott. I am the founder of Yumi She Collective, where I help women connect with their own uniqueness so they can create their brand. And also, I'm a community builder. I'm the founder of Sister Suppers. So check it out, sistersuppers.com, where we create community from within your home through sisterhood. And today I have beautiful Brittany Watkins with us. She is calling in from the Hard Rock in San Diego. She's there for a birthday party today. And so she's taken time out of her busy schedule to talk about her true path, the way that she shows up in the world to really help women connect with their way of really looking beautiful inside and out. So Brittany, thank you for being here. Please share what you do, the gifts that you bring to the world.
Sure. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. So I think that the best way to describe what I do is I help women overcome food addiction. We do a plethora of other things, particularly overcoming low self-esteem. But I am known sort of in my industry as an expert in helping women overcome food addiction and weight loss. So that's what I do. And I use a technique called tapping. Some people may have heard of it. Some people may have not. It's basically self-applied acupressure where you tap on different points along the body, acupressure points along the body, while you focus on psychological problems. So whatever your problem is, like it might be the food craving, or it might be that you're feeling sad or lonely. And then as you tap through the points, what the tapping does is it shifts your brain chemistry so that it actually like makes those feelings disappear. It's really cool. So that's my business. It's a very, very small niche. Not too many people know about tapping, although that is changing. But I've been doing this professionally, I've been doing it for 6 years now, but I've been tapping since I was 15. So.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard of Brittany, you should have. I think most people know about her in the weight loss industry, and she really brings a really beautiful, unique, core-driven mechanicals of the way that our brain works, but you deeply care as well because of your own journey. And so what I love about you and the work that we've done together when you came and did my branding workshop, because you were reinvigorating, you were branding, and I got to really see the essence of you and how much you deeply care about these women, deeply care about these women, and getting them to connect with the truth of who they are and how beautiful they really are inside and out. And I love the tool that you use because you have really mastered this tool. You've got it going on. You've got it. After we worked together, I signed up for your emails and they're brilliant.
Oh, cool.
So great. Yeah, really great. Which we'll talk about that a little bit more, but share a little bit or a lot about your journey as to how you really connected with this and through your own personal story, and then obviously how you managed to bring this to other women as well.
Sure. Well, in my early 20s, I actually had a successful career in real estate. So back when pretty much anybody could make money in real estate, I was in banking, and I was working for one of the biggest banks in the country. And I was one of the most successful bank reps. And so, doing pretty well in life, had a couple of houses, fancy car, went on really nice vacations. And the real estate market collapsed and I lost everything. I was in my early 20s. I'd never had that much money before. I, of course, was spending it as fast as I was making it. And, that was a really, really good lesson for me, because waking up and not being able to make money or the same amount of money that I was used to being able to make, it brought my ego in check. And I realized that I didn't want to sell something just for the sake of selling things. I wanted to actually do something to make a difference. And so I read a whole bunch of career change books and, how to find out what your passion is and your purpose and And the question that really, really got me, that catapulted me into the career that I'm in now, was if you had all the money in the world and you never had to work another day in your life, how would you spend your time? And it's such a simple question, and you may have even heard it before, but if you actually take it in and try to answer it, and you think like, okay, I don't ever have to worry about making money anymore. I'm waking up in the morning. What do I do now? It's a really, really hard question to answer. And so I remember it took me about 4 days to come up with an answer. And, but on the fourth day, it was like tapping. Oh my God, tapping, because I had always tapped, and tapping is the technique that I teach. And, I was the person that when somebody had a problem, I would push them into a corner and be like, let me try this tapping thing with you. Right. And so I was on my free time. This was my hobby. My free time was spent watching YouTube videos of my mentors, looking at how they're working with people and experimenting with myself. So, I never thought it could be a career. This was the thing that I did for fun, just to sort of help me sort out my own mind and my own emotions. But when I came up with that answer, it was like, oh, it was this huge aha moment, and I just lit up inside. And I decided that, even if I was making $100 an hour as a coach, I didn't know anything about internet marketing either, by the way. The only way I thought that you could be a tapper was to be a therapist or a coach and make maybe $100 an hour. That would be like the top money back then. And so I said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to do that, because I really, really felt passionate about it, and I just wanted to help people. And so fast forward, it took me a few years to actually get online and really get my message out there. And I teach about this in my business class now, because I spent so much time procrastinating because I didn't have anybody that I trusted to ask for advice, right? So I didn't have a good mentor. Wow. But I was looking at what other people were doing, and I was trying things, and I was like, okay. So finally, a couple years later, I finally say, okay, here's my website. Business is open. And I just so happened to call the office of one of the leading scientists for tapping. His name is Dawson Church. And I was looking for research to put on my website, and I called to speak to him. And they're like, I'll never forget. They're like, you can't just talk to Dawson. And I'm like, well, okay, I'd like some research then. And so they gave me the research that I was looking for. And a couple days later, I got an email that said, Dawson wants to speak to you. That was the subject line. And I was like, okay. This guy was like my idol, right? He's like big time in my industry. And so I'm like, all right. So anyway, he and I decided to form a partnership. We met and just totally loved each other. He had this amazing community already. He already had sort of a name in the tapping industry, and he really liked what I did. And really at that time, there was nobody teaching tapping for weight loss. Yeah. In my industry, we teach tapping, and you sort of specialize in a certain problem. So my specialty is weight loss. My friend's is money. Another person's is pain, right? So we all kind of specialize in these different things. So up until that point, nobody had really done weight loss, because weight loss is really, really hard to figure out when it comes to tapping. Most tappers can't figure out how to use it for weight, because you actually can't use the traditional form of tapping. Mm. So long story short, he was the one that sort of introduced me to internet marketing, and we created, within about 8 months, we did this huge launch where he launched 3 videos of mine out to about 2.5 million people. And that was sort of when my career started. So, wow. Yeah, so it's definitely been a journey, but it's been, it was my passion. And I think a lot of people that want to work for themselves, you have to ask yourself if what you're doing is like, you love it so much. If this is something that you're doing just to, pay some extra bills or whatever, you're probably not gonna stick through the hard times and do what it takes. Yeah. To see it all the way through. So.
Yeah. And so inspiring to get up every day, even when the chips are down, it feels hard to know that ultimately you're helping and changing and affecting people's lives. That's what definitely gets me going, for sure. Because the life of an entrepreneur isn't always easy, and it sounds like things really lined up for you through your early parts of your career, and you've kept going. You've stayed true to the way that you want to show up. So.
Oh man. Hold on. Just so you know, to tee that up, before I met Dawson, I spent about 2 years trying to make this program. I had some savings. I ended up selling a house of mine, and I did decent on the sale of the house. So I had some money in savings. I wasn't working. I was just working on this project. And like I said, I was kind of in analysis paralysis. Like I changed my website probably 100 times, I couldn't figure out the name. Even when I met you, I still don't even really like or know the names of my programs very well. Right. So I was just sort of throwing shit at a wall, and I didn't really like anything. And I had gotten to the very, very end of my money. Like I was down to the last $5,000 in my bank account, and I was living in San Francisco at the time, which that doesn't go very far in San Francisco. So I moved in with my father. I was turning 31 years old. I moved in with my dad because I didn't have any money anymore, and my program wasn't up and working. I wasn't making money. And I was just so embarrassed, like, that I had to move back in with him, that I just put like every single thing that I had into this program. And within 8 months, I was launched and making enough money to support myself. But it was definitely like, it wasn't, and then, and I had met Dawson at that point, but it wasn't this like instant thing, like, oh, I'm going to do this. And then,
Thank you for sharing that, because I think, and we were talking about this briefly just before we got on, is that I think so many of us look at what she's doing and how successful she's become, and we compare, and we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. We don't know what it took, the journey that she went through to get to that. It just looks like, oh, all of a sudden she was amazingly successful. So I think, I think for me too, when I first started my business, for some reason, I don't know why we have to do it or why we create it or why it shows up this way, but I had to get to the kind of the bottom of the barrel of my bank account before things really started to shift and turn over. And it was scary. It was really scary. And even throughout my business, there's definitely been ups and downs where I've like, oh my God, am I really here again? Like, is this what's happening right now? Because you got to ride the wave as well. And I think, so many of us talk about the successes, but we don't talk about the so-called failures or the hardships. So just thank you for sharing about the 2-year lead up into connecting with your with your mentor. It's a good reminder.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
why weight loss? Why did you get into tapping specifically for weight loss?
Well, I had struggled with an eating disorder for a long time, and I basically used tapping to overcome it. And
Wow.
what I realized was that there were some aspects of tapping that would work for my weight and my food addiction issues, but other aspects that wouldn't. And so I don't know, I was just obsessed with finding an answer. And I kind of just always heard this message that like, this was my job to come up with a solution. And so I experimented with lots of different techniques. And then one day I was eating emotionally. I had actually launched my program. So, okay, here's also a little funny twist, was that when I partnered with Dawson, I hadn't completely solved my problem yet. So I was still struggling with emotional eating. I had solved it about 80%, but there was still about 20% that I was still struggling with. And I think a lot of people, especially coaches, will hold themselves back from starting their business because they don't feel like they're there yet.
Yeah.
And man, I can so relate to that. Like had I not been living with my father and just desperate to get out of his house, I would have talked myself out of promoting myself to 2.5 million people, being in this place where I knew that I wasn't completely over my problem yet. But I decided that actually my father asked me a really great question. He said, Brittany, do you know 99.9% more than most people do about tapping for weight loss? And I was like, Dad, I know more than 100% of people. Like I know more than everybody on the planet. He's like, okay, then what are you waiting for? And that was really great. And I use that a lot with my students because it made me realize that I was keeping people that could have had major shifts and transformations away from, I was keeping them in pain because I couldn't get out of my own way. I couldn't put it into perspective and go, okay, I'm not perfect yet, but that's okay. I'm going to start anyway. And so I decided to do it. So I'm working now. I've got a business. We're talking about emotional eating, tapping, and And I was about to teach a class, and I wanted to eat some chocolate. And I'm like, I cannot keep doing this. Like, I cannot eat chocolate and then show up for my weight loss class talking about emotional eating. And so I heard these prompts and I just kind of followed it. And this voice or whatever just told me what to do. And I did all the things that it told me to do. And all of a sudden I looked down at the chocolate and I didn't want it. And it wasn't a struggle. And I didn't have to think about it. I legitimately didn't want it. And that was the first time that had ever happened to me. Mm-hmm. And so as a result of that, so then I'm like, okay, well, did that really work? And so I started testing it on my clients, and it started working for them too. So as a result, I realized that I had to change tapping slightly and the application and some of the things that I do to make it work for this issue. And so, to get back to your original question, I sort of got into this because regular tapping wasn't working for weight issues, and it was frustrating me because I knew a lot of other people were struggling with it. And so I just was sort of a scientist about trying lots of different things to figure out a formula that worked. And so, but it took me sort of just being like, hey, this is my first formula, and it worked okay. It worked okay. Formula, V2 was a lot better, and is kind of been the thing that's worked for everybody. So,
yeah. I love how you're talking about you were your own test case, because I think there's nothing better than that as well. And I know from the time that we spent together, you are really connected to source. You have like a team around you that really helps and guides you. And I want to talk about that a little bit more, because there's been a lot of conversations throughout this series about not doing it alone, not from just a point of having a physical mentor, but the outer realms, the universal realms of, we forget that we really are guided. And I loved when we were working over that weekend together that you said, I can't have any music on. Can you, because we were doing a lot of writing exercises, and you were saying, I can't have any music on. And I hope you don't mind me sharing this. Can I share?
No.
Okay. And because some of the other women wanted the music on, she's like, I know it sounds crazy, but when I get downloads, it's very musical, so I can't have music on. And I love that about you, because not only have you gone on the path and the journey, and you're seeing success in many different ways, right? But you're connected to a higher source that you really use and tap into. So as we talk about wealth, and you talk about money and having money and then not having money, and then creating money in a new way that's really in alignment with you, and then now we're talking about hearing the guidance and the support, what would be your description, or what would you say wealth is for you?
Well, I mean, I'm a person, I really like money. I like having money. And so I think wealth is, number one, physical money, because there's a lot, for me, there's a release of stress that happens, or a security that comes from knowing that I have money coming in. Wealth for me is also like my health and my lifestyle, right? I could actually make a lot more money if I wanted to work harder, but the harder that I work, and if I really force myself to work, 40, 50-hour work weeks, I'm just not happy, and I'm not enjoying my life. And so I've had to have some difficult conversations with myself and say, okay, where's the balance here? How much am I willing to do? Could I push harder and, double my income this year? Sure. But why am I doing that? Is that actually the life that I want to live? And, so yeah, for me, wealth is freedom and flexibility. That's probably, after money, that's probably the next thing. If I don't feel like I'm free and I have the flexibility to do what I need to do or what I want to do on a daily basis, that just isn't life for me. So, yeah. And then, I also think, you were just sort of saying, like, you're so connected and things like that. That didn't really start to happen until I committed to, I'm here to show up to help other people. And I tell you what, there have been some moments in my life where I've made some bad business decisions, and I've been, $20,000, $30,000 in credit card debt. And like, all of a sudden, just things turn around, out of nowhere. And so I can definitely say, if you're somebody that is truly committed, like I know you are too, to your passion and your purpose isn't just about making money. It's also about truly, truly helping other people. You can trust that. And there's a way that I have learned to relax into that. And even when things get a little bit tight, like, oh, wow, that's a lot of money to spend on that thing. Or, dang, look at our bank accounts right now. We're really in the red. I've learned to just kind of relax and trust that there's a higher power that's helping me. And I think, women especially, we're very intuitive. And I know I can remember throughout my life feeling intuitive, but not ever trusting it. And so when I just started experimenting, this is all I did. I just started experimenting. I'm like, okay, well, I'm hearing this right now. That doesn't make any sense logically, but I'm going to go with this. And I did it on dumb things like, how to find a Thai restaurant. I remember I was walking around San Francisco and I was like, look, I want to eat at a Thai restaurant. And I just allowed my intuition to take me to a Thai restaurant. And it worked. I showed up at a Thai restaurant. Or, you know, when you practice with small things like that, it helps kind of build your trust in your intuition. So I think those two things are really combined, which is, you know, my intuition is stronger because my whole purpose is showing up to help other people.
Yeah, and you're listening to it. You're trusting it. You're listening to it. I think that's key. So many times it's nudging us and it's telling us, but we're not listening.
Yeah.
And so that's beautiful. I loved everything that you shared. So, and it was such a good reminder for me as well. Like, it's things that I talk about and I teach, but when you hear it from someone else again, you know, this is the whole point of this series. Like, you may know everything that we're talking about, but when you're reminded by someone else enough times, by many different people, or just the one person that just says it and it lands, it's like, yes, I've got this. I really got this. Yeah. So I know that you're working on I'm so inspired by this project that you're working on right now, and you're launching it in a week, although it'll be already launched by the time this goes live. But let's talk about it a little bit, because it's super inspiring. It's really exciting. And I know that you have been like working pretty hard to get this going, and it's a passion project. So can you share a little about the app?
Yes. So it's actually really funny, because my original inspiration for starting my business was that I wanted to create a tapping device, because I thought tapping's so weird. Like, when you tap on different acupressure points, you know, 10 years ago, people thought that was really strange. It's becoming more accepted now as we're more into meditation and things like that. But I just thought, you know, how cool would it be to have like a little device so that it's not your fingers and it just sort of vibrates those points, right? So that was version one of my business. This is what I was going to do when I was starting my business. I fell into coaching. That was like totally by accident. But then I went to this spa. I mean, talk about like divine timing. I went to this spa retreat, and I was parking, and I pulled up, and the car in front of me said Dr. EFT, and EFT is what the technique is called, and tapping is just the nickname that we give it. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy knows tapping. So I ended up making friends with him, and he had developed a patent for a tapping device. Yeah, so strange. And whatever, he still hasn't launched it. So I could have gone forward with that idea. But anyway, fast forward to now, what I'm realizing is that the device now is sort of our phones. You know, we always have our phones on us, and we're using apps for everything. And one of the biggest problems that my clients tell me is that when they have a problem, when they have a food craving, or when they're stressed out, even though they might know how to tap through the points, they don't necessarily know what to say. And there's a lot of magic and beauty in saying the right words. And so what I decided to do was create an app that you can open, and anytime you have a problem, you're stressed out, you're feeling sad, you got in a fight with your boyfriend, you are nervous before a first date, you're feeling angry, you know, whatever it is, you can open up this app, push a button, and it'll be me walking you through a tapping exercise that will completely shift this around for you. And tapping works that fast. You know, within about 7 to 10 minutes, you can go from really, really salivating over a chocolate chip cookie to wanting to throw it in the trash, and the craving doesn't come back. And it's the same thing with all the other things too. So you can be really, really stressed out about a project, and then come back to that project and be like, okay, and just kind of move forward with it. And so, I just wanted people to be able to have access to this powerful tool without having to dig in and learn everything about tapping and understand all the different ways that it works. And so this is just sort of making it easy for people. You don't have to have a therapist. You don't have to call me. You don't have to call a coach. You don't have to pay thousands of dollars or even hundreds of dollars to get somebody to help you. And it's on demand, right? It's like, I think there's so many people that, I'm stressed out or I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what to do. And so I just do my normal coping mechanisms, which might be eat food or smoke a cigarette or buy something or, whatever our coping mechanisms are. And so this is sort of like a healthy solution to that. So yeah, it's coming. So we're launching it with just the weight loss stuff first, but my vision is that we're going to have it for every problem. So depression, anxiety, fear, trauma, all sorts of things. So
Oh my gosh, so exciting. And we probably should have touched on this at the start, but for those of the people that are watching that know nothing about tapping, although I'm going to assume to say most of the people will that are going to be part of watching this, can you give like a really quick couple of second intro into what tapping is, or even like how it connects with the meridians and all that sort of thing, like the biomechanics behind it, I guess you'd say?
Yeah. So what happens when we have a problem is it will typically come from an experience that we have. So for instance, you're a little kid and you get bit by a dog. You're 5 years old and you heal from it and you move on. But later in your adult life, you just hate dogs, or you have this intense fear of dogs and you don't know why. Or maybe you do know why and you know that you got bit by a dog and you just don't like dogs. Well, what happens, the reason that you have that experience is that in our brain, we have this area called the hippocampus, which actually stores all of our memories. And you can go in with brain imaging devices and see that when there is a negative memory in your hippocampus, there's actually a little indentation or like a groove. I do this cool demonstration with a sponge. So imagine a sponge with all the little tiny holes in it. That's what your hippocampus looks like, right? So we have hundreds of thousands of these because we have tons of bad experiences all the time, our whole lives. And so what happens when a bad experience, a bad memory gets triggered presently, it will send a signal to the amygdala, which is your fight or flight response. So that's when we get stressed out, we tense up, we start to sweat, or we have fear in our stomach, or we have a negative reaction to something, right? So what tapping does is we have you talk about the problem. So for instance, I would have you go back and I would have you think about being bit by the dog when you were 5. And as you tap on the different acupressure points, the acupressure points send a flood of serotonin to that part of the brain that has the indentation. And it literally severs that signal that goes to the amygdala. So you can remember that that happened to you, that the dog bit you when you were a kid, but you don't have the same physical response. It's like it happened to somebody else. And so that's the power of tapping. And, you know, I truly believe in the next 10 or 15 years that this will change the way psychology is done, because it's so much faster. You know, if you're the type of person that goes to a therapist or you like coaching or whatever, there is no faster change work that I've ever experienced other than this. So yeah, that's sort of the mechanics and the science of how it works. Oh, and what's really cool is that when you go in and you look at the brain, the hippocampus, we go back and we look for that indentation, and the indentation is smoothed over. So the indentation isn't there. It doesn't mean that it takes your memory away, because you still remember it happens, but you just don't have that trigger in your brain anymore.
Wow, that's so powerful. And you're right, it really can work for anything like money blocks or fears around spiders or dogs or whatever it is. And I think what I love about what you're sharing as well is that you've taken it and you've really fine-tuned it specifically for weight loss, because there's so many complexities around weight loss. Like, I know I'm an emotional eater, absolutely. When I get triggered, the first thing I want is chocolate. And I love the way that with your, which we'll talk about your free gift now too, because you have the weight loss blocker quiz where you can go in and see what's getting in your way, and then you've come up with different ways for them to work through what their weight loss blocker is. So you'll do a better job. So explain to us a little bit more about your free gift.
Sure. So if you go to my website, just BrittanyWatkins.com, and you'll see a little button there that says take your, what is your weight loss blocker? Take the quiz. It will give you an in-depth analysis of one of 4 weight loss blockers. So a weight loss blocker is something that I discovered that we have 7 of them. And, you know, most people have, I would say, between 1 and 5 of them, if not all of them. But there's going to be one that'll be kind of the most prevalent, that will always come up. And so as it's like a 10 or 12 questionnaire, and we go really deep, you'll get an in-depth report that will be about 10 minutes of me explaining, this is why you have this problem. And it won't be really anything that you've ever heard before. You know, a lot of this stuff comes from your childhood. And, you know, a lot of people think that if they struggle with food, that they just don't have good willpower. And there's nothing that could be further from the truth. There's these blockers that are signaling to your brain to eat because of certain things that have happened to you in the past. And so, so anyway, it's a great quiz. Everybody that takes it, did you take the quiz?
Yeah, I loved it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I always get really good feedback on it. So that's there. And then we also have a business thing too. So I teach a business course every year. And I teach a class called Behind My Biz. And I took it's like my top 10 tips for creating an online business. And so we can give that away to you guys as well.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
Yeah, we'll put it, let's see, where will we put it? We'll put it on BrittanyWatkins.com/biz school, BIZSCHOOL. And they can download that too. It's like a 60-page ebook or something.
Oh, that's great. Make sure you get that if you're listening to this, because she does have a very successful online business. So you do. It's great. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so glad that you could come on and we can make this work, because I know how dedicated you've been with the app, and I'm so excited for that to launch. I cannot wait. And so we'll make sure that we can share the details around that as well. I think if they can get access to that, that would be really good as well. So enjoy your party. Thanks for calling in, and thanks for all your knowledge and wisdom, and just appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Thanks for having me, Tiffany. You too. Bye.